The brutal murder of a 10-year-old girl left her community outraged and demanding justice.
Attorneys for Fabian Gonzalez have lost their fight to keep pictures of the burned and dismembered body of Victoria Martens out of trial. Michelle Martens learned today just how long she'll spend in prison for her role in the murder of her daughter, Victoria.
It was the most brutal, horrific case, in my opinion, that Albuquerque has ever seen.
3 people tasked with caring for 10-year-old Victoria Martens, all charged for different roles in her brutal death.
This is the heartbreaking story of a young girl, Victoria Martens, whose life was taken too soon. Victoria was just 10 years old when she was brutally murdered in Albuquerque, New Mexico, on August 23, 2016. Her tragic death shocked the community and ignited a discussion about child protection, abuse, and justice. Over the next several minutes, we'll walk you through the details of her life, the events leading up to her death, the investigation, and the aftermath of this devastating tragedy. Victoria Martens was born in 2006 in Albuquerque, New Mexico, to her mother, Michelle Martens. By all accounts, she was a bright and cheerful young girl who loved to smile, play, and engage in typical childhood activities. Friends and family who knew her often described her as a sweet, energetic child who was always eager to share her dreams. Victoria's mother, Michelle Martens, had been through several troubled relationships. Michelle was involved with Fabian Gonzalez, who had a criminal history, including convictions related to violent offenses. Despite these red flags, Victoria lived in the same household as her mother and her mother's boyfriend. Believing that she was in a safe and loving environment, Michelle's relationship with Gonzalez was marked by instability. She had been in abusive relationships before, and while it's unclear to what extent she understood the danger that Victoria was in, it is evident that she failed to protect her daughter from the harm that would ultimately befall her. On the afternoon of August 23, 2016, Michelle Martens left her apartment to run a simple errand. She left her daughter Victoria in the care of her boyfriend, Fabian Gonzalez, and his acquaintance, Jessica Kelly, who had been staying with them. What happened in the hours after she left would haunt the community and law enforcement for years to come. When Michelle returned from her errand, she claimed that she discovered Victoria had been abducted. Her story was that someone had taken her daughter while she was out. But from the beginning, there were inconsistencies in Michelle's account of what had happened that day. Investigators would soon uncover the chilling truth.
There's a little girl inside the house.
How old?
How old is your daughter? 10. Oh, yeah, she's 10.
Police discovered 10-year-old Victoria Martens' body dismembered and on fire inside an apartment in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
It was August 2016. I got a text early in the morning from a source of mine who said this is the worst homicide he had ever seen and that a child was mutilated. The information that day that we were told is that Victoria had been so brutally killed. I mean, she had been literally chopped up and set on fire. Her body parts were put in bags in different parts of the apartment.
The whole thing is beyond anyone's conception that this could happen, especially to a little 10-year-old child.
Michelle's story began to unravel during police questioning. Under intense interrogation, she finally admitted that her daughter had been abused and that she had known about the violent acts taking place. But the truth was far worse than anyone could have imagined.
That day, what we were told was her mother told police that Victoria had been drugged, that she watched her daughter get raped and murdered. The first responders were horrified.
I've been involved in the criminal law for over 30 years, and this is the most inhumane case I think I've come across.
Investigators discovered that Victoria was drugged, sexually assaulted, and then brutally murdered by Fabian Gonzalez and Jessica Kelly. They had both participated in her abuse, and after killing her, they dismembered her body. Attempting to hide the evidence by disposing of her remains in various dumpsters around Albuquerque. The dismemberment was a calculated attempt to destroy any forensic evidence. But investigators were relentless in their pursuit of justice. Despite the horrific nature of the crime, the evidence was clear. Victoria's life had been taken by the very people who should have protected her. Once the true nature of Victoria's death began to surface, the investigation became one of the most important and high-profile cases in New Mexico's recent history. Law enforcement worked around the clock to piece together the details of what had happened.
When the news of Victoria's death hit the community, it hit hard. Government officials and citizens alike pushed for changes in legislation, including the return of the death penalty.
My personal belief is we need the death penalty for those limited and horrific circumstances.
They're predators. They're molesters of children. And I'm asking that the FBI step in and investigate and prosecute this case through the United States Attorney's Office.
Investigators quickly realized that Michelle Martens had been complicit in allowing the abuse to continue. Although she wasn't directly involved in the murder itself, her failure to intervene, her failure to protect her daughter, and her attempts to cover up the crime made her an accessory. Police uncovered that she had, in fact, known about the abuse and had turned a blind eye to it, enabling the events that led to Victoria's death. Fabian Gonzalez, who had a long history of criminal behavior, and Jessica Kelly were arrested and charged with the murder of Victoria Martens. They were accused of not only sexually assaulting and murdering the 10-year-old, but also of dismembering her body in an attempt to destroy the evidence. The case against them was chillingly clear. The details of the crime were so disturbing that they became the focus of widespread media coverage. The community was in shock as the truth about the murder unfolded. The crime was not a random act of violence. It was the deliberate, calculated cruelty of individuals who should have been trusted to care for the young girl.
Saying that he's not a threat to society, I mean, we're talking about a horrific murder.
We're her voice, and we gotta speak up.
If nobody's gonna do it, we have to do it.
In 2017, the trial of Michelle Martens, Fabian Gonzalez, and Jessica Kelly began. The courtroom was filled with a mix of emotions, grief, anger, and disbelief. The prosecution laid out its case against the accused. Michelle Martens faced charges of child abuse, as well as tampering with evidence. Her defense team argued that she wasn't directly involved in her daughter's murder, but the prosecution contended that her negligence and complicity contributed to Victoria's death.
Did it go on for a long time? And how was she hurting? How was it happening?
Okay, so after she hit me with the iron, I went to get up and go into my daughter's bedroom because I was going to take her and I was going to jump from the window. And when I got up, she hit me again with the iron in the back of my head. And as I was making my way to my daughter's room, she kept beating me up. She pulled my hair, she threw me to the floor. She was just beating me up. And right by the door, I had a picture frame, and she hit me with the picture frame. And I eventually made my way out the door, and I squashed her hand in the door, and she let go of my hair, and then she said, "By the way, your daughter's dead."
Fabian Gonzalez and Jessica Kelly were both charged with first-degree murder, child abuse, and other related crimes. Their defense claimed that they were not responsible for the crime, but the evidence against them was overwhelming.
I remember the first stab goes.
Oh, like probably right in the middle or somewhere.
Okay, so make a mark where that first stab went, which doesn't.
This is all.
You know what? Let me tell you something.
But I'm telling you that the first stab was just like, she walked into her and she was like that. So maybe that's right there.
Do it to the paper, just how she did it. Okay.
Stabbing at like that, and she was going bam, 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 bam. It's not getting kind of heavy.
you in your right mind at that time?
No.
Kelly testified she was high and did not know that her cousin Fabian Gonzalez and Victoria's mother, Michelle, left her alone with Victoria on the day of her 10th birthday and her death in 2016.
I was concerned. I didn't understand why they would just leave her outside like that and just take off.
Kelly testified she asked Victoria to come inside, but says the two were not alone for long.
Some guy just shows up. I left the door open, so he kind of walks in. He asked, where's Fable? And I told him he wasn't here.
Kelly testified she thought that man might be Victoria's dad, and that he then walked into Victoria's room.
I ended up grabbing a cigarette and going to the balcony and smoking a cigarette, not thinking anything was going to happen. And when he came out, he let me know that we had something to clean up in there.
Around sunset on August 23, 2016, Kelly testified she checked Victoria's pulse and found none, adding she told Gonzalez what had happened once he and Michelle returned home later that evening.
Because he was like, for real, cuz, what the f? And I was like, for real, what are we gonna do? We have to get rid of her body, no. And he said, all right, we'll take turns.
Gonzalez is sticking to his original claim, saying that there was no unknown man out for revenge and that Kelly is the one who killed Victoria and alone tried to dispose of her body. The defense arguing the multiple unknown male DNA samples on Victoria's neck could have come from a playmate earlier that day, not her supposed killer.
Maybe you know, but I don't know.
The defense further trying to poke holes in Kelly's story by pointing out inconsistencies in her sequence of events.
So you fabricated the story about the other guy wiping blood off. Is that right? That didn't happen.
That did not happen.
And a generous plea deal she was offered and took.
But if this man never came into the apartment, the truth would be 200 years, not 44, correct?
No, because it would have never happened if that man would have never entered the apartment. We wouldn't be here today.
After weeks of deliberation, the jury convicted Gonzalez and Kelly of their involvement in Victoria's murder. Both were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The death of Victoria Martens sparked a wave of grief and outrage across the country. It became clear that there were systemic failures that allowed abuse to continue unchecked. Advocacy groups for child protection used the case as a rallying cry for change.
After her death, they had some memorials at the park and at her school. There's a bench that's put up at her school. Her classmates, they did a lot of artwork after her death. The community, on the anniversary of her death, they paid tribute to her.
Thank you to the residents of Albuquerque, as well as statewide, for your cards, flowers, makeshift memorials, as you paid respectful homage to our precious angel.
In August 2019, Albuquerque residents joined Victoria's grandparents and other family members for a memorial service in honor of what would have been her 13th birthday.
Happy birthday, dear Victoria.
She was a beautiful person inside and out. To remember her as the beautiful person that she was, I think is just as important as trying to set the awareness for what led to this.
Everybody that is guilty of it needs to be held responsible. This was a child. I mean, her life ended way too soon.
I hope that the community can heal, because I know, I've interviewed the neighbors and the teachers and coaches, and just the ripple effect to this case has been really and truly horrific and devastating to a lot of people. I hope we never, ever have to report on anything like this again. And I hope that little girl is at peace.
The case also led to increased awareness about the importance of monitoring at-risk children and ensuring that families in crisis receive the help they need. The tragedy served as a reminder that despite the efforts of law enforcement and advocacy groups, much more needs to be done to protect vulnerable children. Victoria Martens' story continues to resonate with those who work to protect children from harm. Though the justice system has taken action, her memory lives on in the fight against child abuse. A reminder that we must all be vigilant in safeguarding the lives of children. The death of Victoria Martens remains a heartbreaking chapter in our collective history. But her story also stands as a call to action, a reminder that every child deserves to be protected, loved, and cared for. We must not allow another child to face what happened to Victoria.